It was a silent, starless night when Anita heard an eerie, repetitive sound emanating from the beach near her home. The rhythmic thumping was out of place amidst the gentle lap of ocean waves. Compelled by a mix of fear and curiosity, she grabbed a flashlight and ventured toward the source. As the beam cut through the darkness, illuminating the shore, she froze, her breath catching in her throat. What she saw in the dim light was so startling, it turned her blood to ice. It was a terrifying scene in front of her. She couldn't make out all the details in the darkness, and she had no idea what was actually happening. She could only describe what she was seeing as four, well, creatures. But she had no idea what they truly were. They exhibited human-like characteristics, yet they behaved like animals. Anita was absolutely horrified. Anita decided that she needed to get away from them before they noticed her presence, and she didn't even want to think about what might happen if they did see her. So she decided to count down from 3, grab her flashlight, and run as fast as she could. The creatures had stopped thumping on the wall, and at this moment, Anita could only hear the soft lapping of the waves as they crashed against the shore, and her own heartbeat, which still hadn't slowed down. She was still terrified to move. Just as Anita was about to count 1, something unexpected happened. The creatures suddenly started yelling and screaming at the top of their lungs, which completely took Anita by surprise. She half expected them to come running toward her, and she closed her eyes, holding her hands in front of her. And then the screaming stopped. Anita slowly opened one eye, afraid of what she might see in front of her. However, she saw and heard nothing. The creatures had disappeared, leaving her alone on the boulevard. She looked around, confused, but after a few moments, she concluded that no one else was near her. This made no sense to her. Where could they possibly have gone? With trembling hands and weak knees, she slowly picked up her flashlight and approached the wall on which they had been crouching not even a minute ago. She was scared that those creepy white things would leap at her from the depths of the sea. But all she saw was darkness. As she made her way back home, she kept looking over her shoulder. She simply couldn't shake the feeling that someone or something was watching her, and she was a little bit paranoid. When Anita came home, she immediately went back to bed and fell into a deep sleep. In the morning, she had nearly forgotten about the whole experience and thought that it had all been a strange dream. However, when she turned on the news, she turned pale. She immediately knew that something terrible had happened, and she had been there to witness it. The screen flickered to life, showing the beach she knew too well. Then those 4 creatures appeared, exactly as she'd seen them. It was real, not a figment of her imagination. The creatures moved with eerie grace, captured in the harsh light of the camera. The reporter's voice echoed in Anita's living room, confirming the creatures had been seen by others. Anita felt a chill down her spine. This was no isolated incident. As the news continued, Anita's shock turned to terror. This wasn't a dream. Everyone wanted answers, and so did Anita. As the segment concluded, the anchor made a plea for witnesses to come forward. Anita froze. She had seen them up close, more so than perhaps anyone else. The news moved on, but Anita was stuck, wrestling with the decision. Should she share her story and join the chorus of voices? The next day, Anita noticed the town was alive with chatter. Everywhere she went, people were talking about the mysterious creatures. That evening, the newsreader made a special plea. "If you've seen these creatures, we need to know. Share your sightings. Help us understand," he urged. The focus was on gathering detailed accounts to piece together a clearer picture. After much thought, Anita picked up the phone. She dialed the hotline number flashing on her TV screen, her fingers trembling slightly. As the phone rang, she practiced what she'd say. A calm, understanding voice greeted her. "How can I help you today?" it asked. Anita hesitated, the kindness in the stranger's tone offering a momentary respite from her anxiety. She took a deep breath and began, her words initially tangled with nerves. As she spoke, the act of sharing her story, of being heard, provided a sliver of relief amidst the ongoing turmoil. Anita's recounting of her encounter began hesitantly, her voice quivering slightly. She described the creatures, their eerie silhouettes and unsettling movements, emphasizing how surreal the experience had felt. The operator responded with professionalism, acknowledging Anita's courage in coming forward. "Thank you for sharing this with us," they said, promising to record her account for further investigation. With a final thank you from the operator, the call ended, leaving Anita in a reflective silence. After hanging up, Anita turned to her laptop, her fingers flying over the keys. She needed to know more to understand what these creatures were. Her search history quickly filled with queries about mysterious sightings and local legends. Each click led her deeper, her screen a gateway to unraveling the mystery that had taken over her life. Her search soon led her to a forum dedicated to the unexplained. Scrolling through, Anita stumbled upon a photo that made her heart skip a beat. It was them, the creatures she'd encountered. The realization that she wasn't alone, that others had seen what she had, washed over her. The photo, slightly blurred but unmistakable, served as a beacon to all who had experienced the inexplicable. Amidst the flurry of comments, one stood out, an anonymous call to action. "Meet at the old dock, midnight. Answers await for the brave," it read. The message was cryptic, offering no further details, but it promised what Anita craved most: answers. The secrecy of the invitation added a layer of intrigue. Who was behind it, and what did they know about the creatures? She knew she had to decide whether to heed the call or stay behind, safe but ignorant. The promise of finally understanding the creatures pulled at Anita. Anita found herself caught in a tug-of-war between caution and her thirst for knowledge. The risks of attending a midnight meeting at an old, possibly deserted dock were not lost on her. Yet the silence from the town and lack of new information only served to fan the flames of her curiosity. In the end, Anita's desire to connect with others who had witnessed the creatures, to share stories and seek understanding, overcame her apprehensions. On the day of the meeting, Anita set out with a heart full of courage tempered by caution. As Anita approached the meeting point, the forest around her seemed to amplify her fears. The eerie silence that enveloped Anita was suddenly shattered by a terrifying noise, a deep, guttural growl that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere. She froze, her heart skipping a beat. Gathering her courage, Anita called out into the darkness, her voice shaky. "Hello? Is someone there?" she asked, hoping for a human response. At first, there was only silence, stretching out until it felt like another presence. Then, a series of distant screams pierced the night, followed by an oppressive silence. Before she could react, everything plunged into darkness, her flashlight flickering out, leaving her blind in the forest. Without warning, she felt strong hands grip her, pulling her forward. She tried to scream, to fight, but the shock and confusion overwhelmed her senses. Blindfolded and disoriented, Anita felt her heart pounding in her chest. She was being led, her arms grasped firmly, through what felt like endless twists and turns. With every step, questions raced through Anita's mind like wildfire. Where was she being taken? Who had taken her, and why? Finally, the journey stopped as abruptly as it had started. Anita was pushed gently but firmly into a room. The blindfold was removed, revealing a dimly lit space. Beside her stood a man, equally confused and alarmed. They introduced themselves. He was Greg, another attendee of the forum meeting. Both realized they had been lured into captivity by following the mysterious coordinates, now fellow captives in an unforeseen ordeal. Discovering their mutual ordeal and the drive to find answers forged a bond of trust and cooperation between them. Their hearts jumped when the captor suddenly appeared at the door. His unexpected presence startled both Anita and Greg, breaking the monotony of despair with a jolt of fear. He spoke curtly, demanding they follow him. Questions bubbled up, but the situation left no room for resistance. With a mix of fear and curiosity, Anita and Greg had no choice but to follow their captor. The hallway beyond the shed was dimly lit, leading them deeper into the unknown. The captor led them into a dark room, where silent figures loomed, their faces barely visible. A bright screen illuminated the space, casting eerie shadows. The room was filled with a palpable tension as the silent observers turned their attention to Anita and Greg. The captor hit play, and the room's focus shifted entirely to the bright screen. The title flashed across the screen, hinting at a horror movie project that involved creatures hauntingly similar to what Anita had seen on the beach that night. It was all part of an experimental horror movie. The video screening revealed a shocking twist. The creatures that had terrorized Anita, Greg, and the town were part of an elaborate horror movie project. Scenes of behind-the-scenes preparations, costume fittings, and actors transforming into eerie beings flashed before their eyes. The project aimed to blend fiction with reality, turning unsuspecting townsfolk into part of a cinematic experiment without their knowledge. Anita and Greg learned that they, along with the rest of the town, had become unwitting participants in this cinematic experiment. The horror movie project sought to capture genuine reactions of fear and confusion, blurring the lines between the film and real life. The revelation that their fears were fodder for a film project left Anita and Greg utterly bewildered. They looked around at the silent observers, now understanding they were part of the film crew, witnessing the final act of their experiment. After the revelation, Anita and Greg felt a flood of relief, knowing there was no real danger, but frustration simmered beneath. With the creature's mystery solved, relief gave way to a deeper contemplation of ethical boundaries in art. Anita and Greg, along with the town, began to question the morality of using real people's fear for entertainment. The debate wasn't just about the legality. It was about the moral implications of art that manipulates and terrifies real individuals for the sake of a film's authenticity. The town's reaction to the filmmakers' methods was deeply divided. Some argued that the filmmakers should be punished for inducing fear under the guise of art, while others saw it as an innovative, albeit extreme, form of cinematic expression. Anita and Greg found themselves at the center of the debate. Their first-hand experience with the fear induced by the project made their perspectives invaluable. They acknowledged the fear they felt was real, but also recognized that no harm was intended. Their nuanced view added depth to the conversation, highlighting the complexity of evaluating art that teeters on the edge of ethical boundaries. The ordeal Anita and Greg went through sparked a broader discussion on the limits of art and fear. The community, still reeling from the revelations, grappled with questions about the ethical limits of creating art that invokes real terror. The debate spread beyond the town, catching the attention of critics and enthusiasts alike and challenging societal norms about the intersection of art, fear, and ethical responsibility.